Hi there, Money Magnates. Welcome back to our Money Magnet podcast, your spot for no-nonsense, practical discussions about building wealth, boosting your confidence, and living life on your terms. I'm Alex.
And I am Anna. Welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. We are also have upgraded our system a little bit so that you actually can hear us better, see us better, and we're gonna see how it's gonna work out. Today we're gonna tackle a topic that most of us sidestep. It's end-of-life planning. We wanna make sure that your family is less stressed, less worried, and can concentrate on the thing that is actually most on their mind when the worst scenario is happening. So that they don't have to worry about finances, about insurances, about things that that they just can grieve in peace.
So if you are someone who just wants to make things easier for your loved ones and your family, whether that be, sorting out your money affairs, sorting out your medical wishes in case you go to hospital and can't speak for yourself anymore, or even worst case, your funeral plans, then this episode is 100% for you. Maybe you've been delaying getting a will or a healthcare directive, or you just don't know how to do that. But, in this episode, we will break it down into actionable steps tailored for South African needs.
Today we're covering wills, living wills, healthcare directives, funeral planning, and a couple of more steps in order for you to really get this all four things that you have been sidestepping on the way. We do want to remind you that we're not professionals in this field. We're not financial advisors. But of course, we did our research on this topic.
Lots of research.
Yes, we did. We actually even had a podcast, an earlier one, with someone that is specializing on that topic. So we do have the knowledge to speak about it. But what we're saying is, please double check with a professional so that you are making sure that everything is covered.
Because, your situation might be different from that of another person, so it is important to speak to a professional to make sure that everything is legally sound and specific to your situation.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Let's get real here and be honest. Your will or even thinking about death is something that is avoided by many, many people, especially here in South Africa, it feels, because, family and community is at the heart of everything. And just bringing up the topic of death might often seem like, tempting fate.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tricky one. Maybe you're thinking, I don't need a will, I'm too young. Maybe my family will figure it out by themselves. All of those are valid concerns, but please hear us out. We have some valid reasons for why this is important.
Well, the thing is that not planning for your end of life and your estate just creates chaos.
It does.
Yeah, absolute chaos at a time when your family actually wants time to grieve you rather than be stressed about it. But the truth is that according to a survey in 2021 by the Financial Planning Institute of South Africa, more than 70% of South Africans do not have a last will.
That's an incredible number.
That's a very high number. And that just creates stress, chaos, legal disputes, and just it's heartbreaking for your family, in addition to your loss.
Yes. So planning ahead is about love. It's about giving your family clarity about your wishes. It's about planning. It's about making sure that they actually have the time to process what's happening and they know what you actually wanted. So let's walk through the steps that need to happen in order for all of this to take place. It's not as difficult as you think. It's just a step-by-step process. So we are here to help you with that.
A will, your last will and testament, as it's also known, is the foundation of your end-of-life planning. It is a legal document that states exactly who gets what of your assets, and your assets are your bank account, so your money, your portfolio, your investments, your property, your car, all the way down to, personal items like your favorite necklace, if you wanted to give that to a special person, for example. Without a will, we can guarantee you there will be chaos, because under South African law, the Interstate Succession Act will come into force. And, people who you wanted to give something to might end up empty-handed, and someone else might get far more than you ever wanted. Mm-hmm. So it probably does not align with your personal wishes.
Or worse, especially if children are involved, they have to wait for a very, very long time to actually get your funds.
It can easily take 2 years or more for the whole estate to be winded up. So it just takes a long time, and it's very dramatic for everyone involved.
Yeah. For example, if you're married with children, your spouse will receive 250,000 max or a child's share, whichever is greater, and as the rest will be split among the children. Maybe that is not what you want. Maybe you want your spouse to actually be taken care of because you know your children can take care of themselves already. That is what happened with my parents. They made sure of that.
I just wanted to quickly clarify what a child's share is. Basically, the value of your entire estate gets divided by the number of your children plus your spouse. And that is then the child's share.
And if you're not married or don't have any kids, your inheritance might go to your parents or siblings, and it might be a complete shock. Might just not be something what you want. So basically, this is what a will actually boils down to your specific wishes.
Especially if you are in a relationship, your partner of 20 years will get nothing if you're not married and there's no will.
Yeah.
Just be aware of that. Now, what does it take for a will in South Africa to be legally binding? First of all, it must be in writing, so either handwritten or typed. Then it must be signed by you on every single page and at the end. And it must also be witnessed by 2 people that are over 14 and not beneficiaries of your last will.
It's actually pretty logical. I would actually, to make it solid, I would always go with 18 years old.
Just to be on the safe side.
Just
and
to be on the safe side.
When I had mine drawn, I just took it to a party and asked 2 friends of mine to sign it.
Making it really little morbid in this case.
Yes, but it worked. None of them are beneficiaries.
I actually took it to a dinner, so
See, something.
Exactly. You also need to be very clear about your intentions, so don't make it vague. Make it clear. XYZ is getting XYZ. XYZ? Sorry. So my spouse is getting XYZ, and my best friend is getting this and this and that. So the clearer you are, the more simple language that you use, the better it is in scenarios like that.
Just to make sure, when we say, be clear, don't just say my best friend. Write the full name with the ID number, or if they're not South African, with the passport number and the birth date, for example. So give all the details needed.
What would I do without her? It's true though.
Just speaking from experience, I have non-South Africans in my will, so yes.
Yeah. Strictly speaking, you can draft a will yourself, and if you don't have much, or if you feel it's a bit of a touchy subject, this might be a good entry start for you. That you just set it up, you get the rough requirements, and you just have a will in place. This is giving you a bit of peace of mind and, of course, structure to your belongings, how they are actually given away after you have passed. But there's also National Wills Week that is coming up, 15th to 19th to September. And in this week, you can register upfront, you can do that now, and can ask certain lawyers that are dealing with that specific drafting of wills, and they will do it for you free of charge. So this is a great time to actually get a will in place.
Yeah. It will be a basic will, so don't expect them to, talk about all your specifics. It will be just a basic one, but it is absolutely better than nothing. It is free of charge, and it just shows you, they can explain to you okay, yours is actually a specific case, or yours is a more complicated case, what the consequences of you not having a will be. So then it might just be the push that you need to actually pay someone, not cheap, granted, but 100% worth it, to draft a will specific to your needs.
Yes, that's correct.
Another key element is who is going to administrate your estate. That person is called an executor. So name a trusted person, a family member, for example, preferably a younger one. Or you can also name a lawyer, a bank, for example, and then they will be in charge of giving whoever gets what, basically. And they are obviously entitled to a fee for that work, and it's 3.5% plus VAT percent of your estate, of course.
A lot of financial advisors also do it, so you can also ask them to walk you through that. Yeah.
And also another important point is, just don't name one. I have 3. So first choice, second choice, third choice is optional. But, you never know if the first choice is available. So make sure there's a second one.
Very true. Beneficiaries. We already said it, but make clear who gets what. My son is getting the house. My spouse is getting my savings. And then of course the name and the ID number. We mentioned that already.
And the list of the bank accounts.
Exactly. If you have children, very important, appoint someone that is willing to take care of your children until they're 18. Be very specific about your wishes there as well. And of course, get them into the loop, it's like ask them, speak to maybe your sister, whoever, your best friend, whoever is actually wanting to take care of the children, talk to them upfront about that.
Yeah, shouldn't be a nasty surprise.
Maybe a little like, no, here's my children. I don't know.
It should not be like, oh, look, here are my children. Now you're a parent. No, that person should know what's coming.
We're joking, but there is movies made about this, and it's funny. It's true. If you have specific requests or bequests, then they also must be mentioned. Like, let's say you actually want to give some of your funds away for a voluntary organization, just make it clear, who is entitled to actually receive that, name the non-profit organization, their number, all of that.
And of course, very important, keep it updated because, life changes. You might get divorced, you might get remarried. And it has happened before that your ex gets all your assets because the will was never changed.
Remember we spoke to Carrie about that?
Yes.
Like in our last podcast, it was really interesting. The story is that her ex-husband never updated his will. And she not just is divorced from him, he already has married another woman. So she is still receiving all the funds. But she was really, really honest about that. And she was like, okay, if this were to take place, obviously she would give all of the funds to the now wife. This is just because who cares? She's awesome.
Yeah, but not every ex-wife might be so nice.
Correct. So please update things.
Absolutely. So your options are either to write a new will or a so-called codicil, which is an amendment to your will. Also, store it somewhere where it's easily accessible so that when you do pass away, the people who will administrate the whole estate will know where to find it, obviously. And once again, write very clearly what your wishes are. And like we said before, do get a professional to at least proofread it and make sure it's legal and everything. Because if someone, after you've passed away, then contests your will and says no, it's unclear or you were coerced into this, the higher court will have to take this case, and that can be very long and very costly. So make sure that your will is legally binding and watertight.
Exactly. Make use of National Wills Week. Make use of National Wills Week.
Absolutely. I mean, how often do you get a chance to have a legal document drawn for free?
Once a year. Sorry. All right, let's talk about living will. Living wills are a little bit different than a normal will because, of course, a living will basically means that you are no longer able to take care of your medical wishes. You're either not able to speak or you're in a coma. So it's very important that your actual wishes of how the medical professionals should progress during a situation like this or according to your wishes. And the reason why this is so important is because you might be in pain and you might actually think it's more important to have pain medication than surviving.
In South Africa, a living will or a healthcare directive, as it's also known, is not legally binding, but it's usually accepted by medical professionals, especially if it's drafted according to the guidelines of the South African Medical Association. And like Anna already pointed out, you want to make sure that you cover all the important points, like do you want life support, yes or no? And if so, for how long, for example? Or painkillers, even if it means shortening your life, for example. So these are all decisions that are very hard for your family to make if they don't really know what you want. And just having a healthcare directive takes that stress and possibly that guilt and all the fighting that will happen in your family. Because I can guarantee you, your spouse and your mother will probably do different things.
Yeah. It's about making it easier for the people that you love. That's always what it boils down to. It's just, To make a living will valid, you need to have a template from SAMA, South African Medical Association, and basically just, use those guidelines to actually have the document solid proof. You can always ask a lawyer to look over it. It might not be super cheap, but it is definitely worth it. So just double check with a professional or use the SAMA guideline. You know, that will be helpful. We have, of course, AI does help a little bit. Then have it signed again and have it witnessed by 2 people. So again, initial on every single page, sign at the end page, and of course date it and say the place, you know.
Same as your last will.
Exactly. Well, if you use the template, it shouldn't be so difficult because all of the information is already there. Then share it with your doctor, with the people that you love. You know, have it in a Google Drive that is accessible to the loved ones, and then tell them, look, that's where you can find that in case, because if shit hits the fan, you don't want things like that to hold it up. It's very different to a will, you know, where like you already have passed, things can take now time to be dealt with. Sorry, like it's true though. But with a living will, that's very different. You know, your life is at stake, and you can no longer communicate your own wishes. So that's why it's important to have it easily accessible. My mom's living will, for example, does mention she does not want to be resuscitated. And that was a really difficult thing for me to find out initially, especially as I was carrying the responsibility of her life with that, because she handed me the power of attorney for that, plus the information. But it did give me clarity that these are her wishes, and with that, a little bit more peace that I will make the right choice in a very difficult situation.
So in addition to your healthcare directive or living will, as we said, which outlines your medical wishes, you should also have a durable power of attorney for healthcare. That's the one Anna was talking about just now, because there's also a general power of attorney, which we'll talk about later. But the durable power of attorney for healthcare is very important, because that one appoints the person that can make then medical decision on your behalf. So name 1, 2, 3 people to make those decisions for you. You should have alternatives in case the first one is not available. And make sure they know what their authorities are, what they can do and what they can't do. And then, of course, again, date it, sign it, same as everything else.
A very important point, as Alex just pointed out, is the moment that you are incapacitated and you are unable to speak or, basically form your wishes. The normal power of attorney, like a bank account power of attorney, will cease to exist. So if you have granted that to a spouse, to a family member, it will no longer be valid. So that's why this durable power of attorney is really important. Besides, you need to have that in place, because like when shit hits the fan, this is it's really important that the people around you are able to move on your behalf.
What you can do with your power of attorney, your general one, is to add a clause that states that it should remain effective even if you are incapacitated, but that is not legally binding. So it is up to the court whether they will accept it or not. And that's why it's so important to have 2 different ones. So your durable power of attorney for healthcare is specifically meant to remain active or effective once you've become incapacitated, but that power of attorney only allows you to handle medical decisions. It does not allow you to handle, for example, your partner's financial affairs. That is what a general power of attorney is for, and hence that little extra clause, but may or may not be legally valid. There is no such thing as a durable general power of attorney here in South Africa. It does exist in some other countries, but not here. So that is why it is so important that you go and see a professional to have all those things sorted out.
So as Alex already said, it's really important that you have these documents in order so that they actually meet all the standards, so that when problems arise, that your loved ones are able to act and that they know your wishes. And without these documents, your family might have to deal with court and lawyer costs that are time and cost intensive. So you don't want them to have to deal with something like this when life or death situations arise and quick decisions have to be made.
And let's be honest, a funeral in itself is expensive enough, so you don't want to have to add more costs to the whole drama anyway.
Correct.
Funerals in South Africa are deeply cultural and can vary greatly, whether it's an Afrikaans funeral or a Zulu funeral. But one thing they have in common is that they usually cost quite a bit of money. And planning ahead really helps your family in that stressful situation, and hopefully also saves them money if you made the right kind of plans.
Just for you to have a ballpark number, they can cost about 10 to 50,000 rand, so quite expensive. Plan for that. Write down your wishes, you know, do you want a cremation, do you want a burial, do you want a big ceremony with a lot of people, do you want it small? Basically just, again, be very clear about what your wishes are for this, you know. If you don't care much about your body after it has ceased, then maybe that is not that important for you. But remember also that burials, or like just the funeral itself, is something that is really important for the people that actually are left behind. So I would definitely give them a bit of leeway, especially if it's not that important to you. But you can also, you know, define if your body actually goes to research. Yes. Yeah. Or, of course, you can also donate your organs.
Which I do, and I highly recommend it. Because I know being an organ donor is a very personal matter, but you can save the lives of up to 7 people with your organs. And if you're also a tissue donor, I think it's another 20 or so. And I just feel like that would be a lovely way to contribute to other people after your passing.
She's really big into recycling. And of course, consider a funeral cover to ease the burden of the costs. You know, you can get really easily insurance for funeral cover. I think I actually wouldn't know how much it costs, because my setup is a little bit different, so I didn't look into it. But if this is something that is important for you, like specifically in respect of how the ceremony has to go down, like a big thing, it would be advisable to make sure that you have the insurance to make sure that your family is covered and not has to scramble when this horrible time is happening. Funeral cover can cover up to 100,000, 10 to 100,000 rand. So it's quite substantial, and they usually actually pay out about up to 48 hours. So make sure you have a reputable insurance provider that it helps you with this, so that you are not leaving your loved ones with this burden of costs.
An alternative would be to have your own safety fund, for example, specifically for funerals. And especially in the Muslim culture, where you must be buried on the same day, basically, the insurances wouldn't pay out that quickly. Not every insurance, at least. So that might be an alternative to get quicker to that kind of money.
Yeah, thank you for adding that.
So, like Anna already said, funerals are actually not for the dead. Funerals are for the living, and it's their way of grieving for you. So yes, you can write down your wishes, but they're not legally binding. And you should also maybe talk to them if you know, like, you are of old age, or if you know that you have a terminal disease, then maybe talk to them of what your wishes are, but also accept that it might just not go down that way, because, like I said, it is for the living, not for the dead.
Yeah.
What's also important, if you have specific wishes for your funeral and you know that your family will adhere to them, then make sure it's not included in your last will, because that is usually read out after the funeral. But keep a separate document with your wishes for the funeral.
Your hard-earned money also shouldn't be eaten up by taxes. So you need to know how that works. South African estates also face estate duties. And of course, there's also the executive fees that we mentioned already earlier, like, you know, the 3.5% plus VAT.
What I'd like to point out is that the first 3 million are tax-free. After that, you pay quite a bit of tax. So here are some options that you can use to minimize your tax losses. The first one is a so-called inter vivos trust. And any item or money that is placed into that trust is not part of your estate. So you don't pay any estate duty on that. For example, you could put any rental property into that trust, and that would then pass on to your kids directly without you having to pay for estate duty, them having to pay estate duty. But the thing is, with trusts, they are taxed quite highly at 45%. Any capital gain is taxed at 36%, and you need a trustee. So they're not cheap in setting up and maintaining. Can be an option, don't have to be an option for everyone. So again, get professional advice if this is good for you or not.
nice one is that there is a spousal exemption. Whatever you actually gave to them, as they don't have to pay tax on that, but it will be taxed once they pass away.
So the next heirs will be then taxed on what they received, but they won't.
Yes. A policy cover can, of course, prevent any fees, or make sure that you actually have the money for the fees that can cover taxes, can estate duties, all of those admin fees that arise with passing on.
And last but not least, you should have a document with your login details, whether that is social media or your bank, and very, very important if you have cryptocurrency. And a friend of mine has a very clever solution to that, actually. He gave half of his password to one family member and the second half of the password to another family member.
I love it.
So none of them can steal the money from him. But if he passes away, when he passes away, many, many years from now, then they do have access to that. So it is a very good idea to have a document, a secure document, at a secure location. Very important, not in your will, because that becomes publicly available and you don't want people to have access to your bank. So a secure document with all your details so that your executor can actually access your bank and so on.
So all your digital assets should be mentioned in there. So that's basically what you have to specifically take care of.
Yeah.
We think it's a legal must that you actually consult a legal advisor, financial fiduciary, specialist basically that deals with these matters. Mistakes in estate planning can cause a far downside for the people that have to deal with it. It could be legal consequences. I had a friend that had to deal with this for over 2 years and she still lost everything. So please just make sure that you actually plan ahead and have this solid. Yeah, that's why we're talking about this during or shortly before Legal Wills Week, because it's such an easy and accessible way for you to actually process that information.
Last but not least, we would like to talk about talking to your family. We said earlier that many people feel like talking about death is tempting fate, but it will happen to all of us. There's no denying. So find age-appropriate communication, especially if you have children, and make sure that they are in the loop of what you want, they know where the documents are, and just to avoid any disputes, fighting and so on. Because it would be a shame for your larger family to break apart after your passing, just because they're fighting over things.
Have honest talks now, as Alex said already, if you clarify what you want to happen and they can actually come to the table and explain what they would like. It's a conversation and not a decision. So it's actually really helpful to understand the needs of your family members, of your spouses, of your potentially even friends before this happens. So have the conversation and you can see how that is going, and you don't have to go into too much detail, but you can just test the waters.
The reason why it's so important is not just for your family to not break apart afterwards, but also because under Section 25 of the Constitution and the Maintenance of Surviving Spouses Act, certain dependents, like your spouse or a minor child, can claim in court to get their share of the estate if they have been excluded. So it's very important to be honest up front if there is maybe an illegitimate child that no one knew about.
Thank you, Alex. If I haven't had that thought, all the children's had to come through me.
You didn't. But what about the men?
Okay, I get it. And most importantly, don't get overwhelmed. Just start small. Think about what you want, maybe today, then write down the steps tomorrow, then, maybe just register for the National Wills Week. And so just start on the process. Don't push yourself too hard, but make sure that you're actually getting ready for those things.
Before wrapping up our podcast, we would just like to point out the key takeaways again. First and foremost, have a will, a last will and testament, and in order for that to be legally valid, make sure it is written, it is signed by you on every single page and at the end, and it is witnessed by two people who are not beneficiaries. Best thing would be to have a lawyer look over it to make sure it is legally watertight.
Create a living will with your medical wishes, like no life support after a drowning accident, like whatever it is that you want, make sure that you clarify that in your living will.
And also add a durable power of attorney for healthcare to appoint someone who will make the medical decisions for you if you become incapacitated.
Plan your funeral to ease financial and cultural burdens.
Yeah, like get a funeral cover.
Yes.
And of course, you should be aware of tax implications, like your spouse exemption, who gets what and who pays how much tax, is trust an option or not, and again, please do consult a specialist because everyone's situation is different.
Please talk to your family members openly. The more you talk about these things, the easier it gets and the more they are informed about what you want, and you will understand what they need.
And of course, life happens. So please update your documents every 2 to 3 years. Specifically your last will, but maybe your medical wishes change as well. So just have a look at them.
Yeah.
And make sure they are stored easily accessible so that there is no scrambling when something happens of like, oh my gosh, where are the documents?
Yeah. I know we've said it now a couple of times, but planning or having a will in place or all of these documents in place is really about showing love for the people that matter most to you. So just give it a thought. Contact your financial advisor, contact a lawyer, and just make this time in September that is accessible to you about starting the process of getting this done.
If you found this episode helpful, then please give us a like and share it with your friends and family who also, need this information. Like we said, 70% of South Africans do not have a last will. And this helps us to just spread the word, spread the importance to make sure that as many South Africans as possible can, plan ahead and make sure that their families are safe.
So keep building confidently on those little things that we taught you because you are a
Money magnet.